All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again on The Humanitarian. Today on the show we have Evan Elliot. He's an amazing realtor and speech coach, and today we are going to be talking about Evan's business and his relationship with the Noblesville High School speech team. He has an extensive resume, including but not limited to being a former Noblesville High School student, starting his own business, and managing the Noblesville High School speech team. So after this podcast, go ahead and check out Evan on Twitter at Evan Elliot and his Facebook page, Evan Elliot. So I think we should first talk about your involvement with the speech team.
Sure.
So where did your passion for being involved with that come from?
Well, I have a pretty lengthy theater background, and speech can sometimes be interpreted as competitive acting. So I kind of took the acting side of it and really focused on coaching that side of it. I basically competed for one semester on the Noblesville team back in 2009, and I competed in 3 tournaments. I went to state, and that was it. So that I have a pretty limited competitive experience, but took that into judging multiple tournaments and now coaching.
And when you're being involved with the speech team, do you kind of like set out goals for the speech team, or do you just kind of are like, good luck, guys?
Well, this year we have a pretty awesome goal, which is to win a state championship. There are about 100 high schools who compete in speech and debate in Indiana, and we've solidly been in the top 5 for the past 3 years. So this year the goal is to win it all.
Is Michaela still working with you guys, or?
Michaela Nate, yes, she is an IU Bloomington student who just graduated and has been an amazing asset as far as our political events and some of our debates as well.
I did not enjoy that the speech ones, the 7-minute speech. I thought that I was so down for that, and then like I did it, and I was like, yikes.
Extemporaneous speaking is probably one of the toughest events that we offer for sure, and it's very limited preparation, and then, like you said, speaking for 7 minutes straight and as fluidly as possible. It's pretty tough.
My very first competition, I did really, really awful, the very first one. And the way like that it works is like you get to use the speech the second time. And so like by the second time I had enough time to like think about it and like get out my nerves, and like I did it pretty well. And so like I got like 3 out of like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started the next round, and you have to write a whole new speech. And I got into the room with the guy, and like, first of all, my speech was about like black rights or something like that.
Okay.
And it was like talk about the like the issues with like the police and like the black people like in the like current like news and stuff, and like I was like, I don't really follow that. I was like, I don't know even where it's at. And so like not only am I just BSing like this whole thing, but I don't even know where to begin with my lie, because I don't even know like anything about this.
Sure.
So then I totally take it like left field. And so like my thesis like makes sense, but then the whole rest of the body and everything is just like not even. So like I'm walking into this room to this guy who is judging me so hard. I can already tell, but it was probably all in my head. But I was just like, this guy is judging me. And I literally said like 5 words, and I was like, nope, like I'm done. Like I cannot do this. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And like I walked out of the room, and he was just like, what just happened? I was just like, I cannot do this. But
everybody definitely starts from somewhere, that's for sure.
That was so weird. It was an interesting experience. But then I was just like, yikes, I'm not going to do this. And so then I think you said something about doing, is it World Debate or something?
World Schools Debate,
Yeah.
Yep. It's
And
basically a team debate.
I really liked that. I thought that was fun. Because, like, I'm really good at arguing with people, like, when I have someone to argue with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I think that's where I can keep up like, rebuttaling your things. And I think that's where the law...
You're a natural debater. I think you would excel at that.
And so that was definitely the thing that I had the most fun with.
That's great.
So your business, so what's it called?
Sure. So my company is called eXp Realty, and I own the Elliot Property Group. We're a group of 4 agents who basically help people buy and sell homes. We also handle a small portfolio of rental properties, and it's just been great helping people every day live the American dream, and we have a lot of fun doing it at the same time.
So, like, I'm really curious about like where this all came from, because I'm sure when you were in school you didn't say you wanted to be a realtor when you grew
I did
up.
not.
So like, did you like go to college?
Yes. So I'm a Purdue Boilermaker. Had a major in political science and communication, and so I actually was going the political route for quite a while. I worked for a few local politicians, and as well as our current vice president now, and
That's kind of really cool.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
it was pretty neat. And but eventually, I just kind of got to the point where I was working unbelievable hours into the very early morning, and finally decided that I would take the clientele that I had met in the political realm into a real estate business, and got licensed when I was 20 years old, and now about to enter my 7th year in real estate.
That's so crazy that you went to college, because that's what I'm literally I'm putting on my applications to IUPUI communications, and I want a double minor in political science and environmental science. That's crazy.
It's fantastic. It's a really good program of study, and I think communication in general is just a fantastic platform to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I think it's funny because in Don's class he talks a lot about like the importance of going to college, and like not everyone needs to go to college, and
Sure.
so I'm very sure that I want to go, because I think that I definitely, if anything, having a major in communications like would just be helpful with whatever I end up doing, because I may not be the next president, but I definitely know that whatever I go into doing, I need to have those skills, because that's just the kind of person that I am.
Sure.
And so like I just think that was interesting, like his perspective on college, and like I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, with the history of managing a few real estate offices as well, I've hired so many people, and looking back, really the degree was kind of the piece of paper that just got your foot in the door. But it's what surrounds that degree that is most impressive, in my opinion. What is your extracurricular background? I found myself hiring a few people who had done speech and debate or theater, and you just never know what the history of the person who's interviewing you really might be. And if you did speech and debate and they did speech and debate, well, boy, we've got a partnership now, and I want to work with you.
So you definitely feel like college added a lot to your life, and it wasn't a waste of time.
I definitely wouldn't say it was a waste of time. I think I knew going into it what I wanted out of it. And if you go in just because everybody else is going to college, that is not an excuse to go to college, in my opinion. I think you really need to know what your ultimate goals are, and if you're going to be an engineer or a doctor or a teacher, obviously that's so important.
Yeah.
But now that the technology sector obviously has just come out full force, and a lot of those jobs require skills that they're not teaching in the classroom. So those folks really have to supplement their learning experience with opportunities outside of the classroom.
Yes. We talk about that a lot in innovations.
Sure.
Is like just definitely like looking at the way that technology is going to replace a lot of jobs that we have today, and like kind of not getting stuck in that like disappearing jobs category.
Absolutely.
So before you kind of did your own thing with the realty,
Realty, sure, real estate, whatever you want to call it.
like, did you work for somebody else, or who'd you work for?
Sure. So I actually started out on a small real estate team at Remax, and spent about 6 months there, just kind of getting my feet wet, and then moved on to Keller Williams, which is now the largest real estate company in the world, and was an agent on my own there, and also just had a great opportunity to get into management roles, and learn a little bit more about what agents in the marketplace are really looking for, some of their needs, and getting to meet all their families too. That was pretty neat.
Like, what about being a realtor kind of keeps you interested and like keeps you wanting to pursue that profession?
Sure. The Flexibility is pretty great. I would say I spend a lot more time than most working after 7 o'clock at night, but that's okay. And I would say it's the clients that I've had the opportunity to work with. I almost feel a moral obligation to be the one to help them, because if I'm not helping that person, I don't know who is. And not to say that we have a whole pool of realtors who are not, ethical or
Yeah.
something like that, but I just know that I'm going to take care of them to the best of my ability.
And like finding the right house kind
Absolutely.
of mean? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So like what made you want to go your own direction and kind of start your own business?
Well, I've always felt that developing people was a strength that I was just kind of born with. And so it was very important to me to be in a position where I could help people grow in their profession. And having a small team of real estate agents allows me to do that at a small scale, but what I feel is a much more effective scale. And we're working on lead generation techniques and how to service clients in the best way possible.
And so like, how many years in the making is this? Like,
Sure. So probably about 7 years in the making. I always knew that I wanted to run my own team, and now I'm doing it.
so like when you first started, like, was there definitely a period of failing and like?
100%, especially being a bit younger. I mean, I got in when I was 20,
Yeah.
and you have folks who will say, you're too young to represent me in the sale of my home.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I had to go in with the attitude that, look, it doesn't matter what age I am, if I have an idea that makes sense to you,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. And so I was really able to break down the barrier pretty quickly, probably in my first 2 years. And the questions started going away a little bit.
Do you think that you have like concrete things that maybe you failed at that somebody else who's starting up could maybe like surpass?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest failure was that my systems were not in place in the way that they should have been. For example, systems for following up with clients, for generating those leads, for servicing a contract. I mean, I knew how to do all of those things, but I hadn't developed a system that someone could come in and run my business tomorrow if I drop dead.
Yeah.
That's really important, to have that business plan coming in of just how you handle every aspect of your business. And I think people getting into the profession can't be afraid to talk to people. And I was talking to people, but not on a large enough scale. And so there are some things that you have to do, like picking up the phone and cold calling some people sometimes, or door knocking. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that. But the most important thing is to do something and just do it really well.
Yes. That's like that's such a huge like concept that we've also been talking about, is just like just doing it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
stop talking about it and
100%.
just flip and do it. And like that bothers me, and I didn't understand how much it bothered me until I started doing, like, because I didn't even realize how much I did it until I just started doing. But like my whole junior year, I just was like, I wish I could do this, and I wish I could do that, and I wish I had time for this, and then Don slapped me across the face with reality and was like, Sarah, why aren't you doing? And I was like, I don't know. And now it's like, it's interesting to like take a look at your friend group or something and be like, why aren't you doing? And like the things that you're complaining to me about were things that I was complaining about. But like you could be doing like me, and then like,
Right.
It's just interesting. It's like such a different perspective, like, because it's like, I wouldn't say that it's easy, but it's definitely not hard to just be like, today I'm not going to talk about it and I'm just going to do it. Like, it's just like a different mindset. And like on my Twitter and stuff, I've definitely been like preaching that about like just every morning, like I call them morning motivations or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally just like don't sit on the couch today, do something. If that doing something is you going to the grocery store instead of Postmating, that's doing something. Like,
Yes.
that's a step towards, like, doing something. And so it's, like, it doesn't have to be this profound epiphany of, like, this giant thing or whatever. It literally could just be, like, doing something different than what you're doing yesterday.
The small steps make a huge dent, for sure.
Yeah. And so, like, you talked a lot about you worked for people in the political realm. Do you think that any of those connections that you made kind of were resources for you when you started?
Absolutely. The first house I sold was a $400,000 house, and I thought, wow, it's this easy, right? You know, all I have to do is continue to foster this group, and obviously it's not quite that easy, but that group of people has become a really good sphere of influence for my real estate business, and as long as you keep touching them in some way with either a phone call or an email or a mailer or something like that, it's just really important to keep in touch with them, and the business just kind of flows from that when you really plug into that sphere.
Yeah. I think it's funny how you said about the $400,000 thing, because my dad, like, I was probably like middle school or something like that, but I would go to work with my dad, and like he was working for the lending, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was definitely not like a big name mortgage company, and they were talking about like, if we could just close this many X amount of dollar houses a month, then we would meet our monthly mark, and like on paper it's like, it seems like such a good idea, like I can, but then like some months they wouldn't always hit it, and so I was just, it's like, why doesn't, like, well, why aren't you getting it if like it's on the paper, it makes sense, but there's so many things that go into like mortgages that like you wouldn't think go into mortgages, I guess.
Right. No, absolutely.
And I think it's like having someone who like understands money and like how to handle it and be like responsible with it when he's dealing with like people who aren't good at having good credit and don't have a very big savings account or anything like that. Like, those are just things that like I thought like everybody knew,
Sure.
I guess, because, and like I think it comes back to like the education thing too, because as a senior I am sitting in an English 12 class learning how to write an essay using direct quotes.
Yes.
Now, as a senior, I have already done that. If you don't know how to write a paper with direct quotes by the age of 17, I think you need to reflect a little bit on your life and your life choices. And I think that a class like financial education or something would be like 1,000 times more important than like English 12. And personal finance is a class at this school, but people don't take it because it's not required. And it's just like, it just blows my mind. Like, and then you get into these situations where like you, like these people that my dad deals with, that they don't have credit and they don't have all the other things that go into mortgages just because they don't know, or they didn't, and
Right.
It's like they dug themselves in so deep of just like ignorance, and they have to like crawl their way out, and it's like, it's just interesting. The educational like piece that so many people miss because of, we're so worried about the SAT and getting a 4-star school and just like things that bother me.
Okay.
Gosh, it's so interesting. The politics that go into school too blows my mind. Like, school should not be a political issue. Like, school should be, these are the future Americans, and we should be doing everything in our literal possibility to like help them and make them as successful as possible. Because why would you want a population of just mildly informed children? Like, I don't understand. So I was kind of interested about the like dynamic between small businesses and like the political realm and like things that they pass. So like, what level of government would you say has the most impact, like legislative wise, on like small businesses?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of government at the local level. I just think it's really important that everything is running on, all cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big effort of government and infrastructure and private business and education all working together because they all really feed each other. As you were saying, obviously high schools are tasked with helping create the leaders of tomorrow, and whether they go on to college or technical trade, our schools have to be connected to our local businesses so that they're aware of what the workforce looks like. On the same token, our government really has to support our public safety, obviously our first responders, and as well as any infrastructure projects. And it just all really ties in hand in hand. I think that obviously the further up you go, the more politics there are, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel that there's a huge opportunity at the local level to come together as a community. And if each community can be really cohesive, we can have an even more cohesive state and country as well. But I don't think that many communities are taking the steps necessary to inform their communities and make sure there is that cohesion. I think there's a lot of confusion, a lot of public relations gaffes that happen, and it all comes back to that communication piece. If we have more people who can effectively communicate ideas and effectively communicate with other people, that's going to create that cohesion.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Like, me and my mom talk about this all the time about, like, if you even just look at Indiana and you look at, like, do you know where Aurora, Indiana is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the perfect North Slope kind of area. I mean, if you look at that area and you look at Hamilton County, I mean, it's day and night difference.
Sure.
And they're a 2-hour drive from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally because they lack leadership in that community.
Right.
To be responsible with financial matters and to be like very just good leaders. Like, and when you said that thing about how we're supposed to be fostering the leaders of tomorrow, like, we're not, because, and it's not even just our generation. I mean, it's the generation who's running now. And so if we have these bad examples of bad leaders who are supposed to be making new leaders, like, it's just like a sick cycle of terrible leaders. And if we have, and then not only that, but the communication aspect of, like, all of these pieces working together to make not Indiana work, and then Indiana working with all the other states to make the United States work. Like, if you have a weak link like those other, like, less cohesively working counties, and then you have, like, Hamilton County that's, like, booming and economic growth, it's like we're picking up their slack because, and it's like we could all be better if all the pieces were working better. So I thought that was a really great point. And I've never heard anybody talk about that before. Like, I don't listen to everyone in the world talk, so, like, I'm sure that, like, people have thought that before, but I don't know, that was just, like, was refreshing almost. Like, I was like, thank you. Like, me and my mom aren't the only one in this little corner of Indiana where, like, communication.
Yes, people just need to talk to each other, and I think a lot of disagreements and fallacies just come from people not communicating. And even in my professional life in the real estate world, the quickest way for a deal to go south is when one agent isn't communicating properly with the other agent. And so, I think we're obviously blessed to live in a great county, like you said, as Hamilton County, where we do have some great infrastructure, we have some good leaders, and I'm really excited for the future of this community, because I think as this community continues to grow, other communities will continue to grow as well, because our growth is going to be so large that there's nowhere for us to go but into other areas. And I think that bodes well for some smaller towns like Fortville, Pendleton, areas like that.
I definitely agree with that. I think that if we could, like, even, like, my mom likes to use the example a lot of, like, we struggle a lot with, like, education or just, like, laws and stuff. Like, we completely neglect the whole rest of the world. Like, right there. It's just right there.
It is.
And we have the internet. Like, what are we doing? And it's like, we need to be using other people who are being successful in areas that we are struggling as examples on
Sure.
how to restructure things and to reform things. And I think that it's ignorant to just ignore them as a like very easy example on how to run something successfully. And I just think that that's a great example of like, if our community here is thriving, how it can help the other communities. This could be very controversial.
Sure.
But I know he hasn't done. I try so hard to follow Trump, but it's so hard. It is so difficult to not even just follow Trump, but to follow what's news. Like, what is the truth? Because like, especially with this election, I mean, like there was definitely like fake media before, but it like exploded all over, and it's like it's almost a chore now to look at the news because it's like so much like what you don't even know what the truth is anymore. And do you think that has he done anything? Like, I guess is my question. Because I know you said you follow politics a lot. And
Sure. So from the real estate industry specifically, obviously Trump is a real estate mogul. So he has done a few things at the National Association of Realtor level to kind of champion our cause, champion our profession. You know, one of the things that both sides can actually agree on, which is unbelievable, is the debt has pretty much come down about $108 billion, you know, since he took office, which, I mean, we're talking about a $20 trillion number. It doesn't seem like much. So I would say that, you know, from my perspective, those would be the positives. I think one of the bunny trails that you can go down when you get into leadership is not listening to the people around you and not hiring people who are smarter than you. I think Trump has had a very difficult time because he has not gone through proper channels of how to hire someone. I quite honestly don't think he cares, you know, what the proper channels are because he does his own thing. So as far as his preparedness in multiple interviews recently, it's been really rough to watch because I used to be on that public relations end of the political realm, and to watch how unprepared he is for multiple pressers and some of the things that come out of his mouth, it's unprecedented in presidential history that a president would say some of the things that he has indeed said. While I consider myself probably a barely right-leaning moderate, I do think that that something needs to be figured out very quickly with his administration because, again, his public relations team is either not advising him correctly or he's not listening to anyone. And I would actually say it's the latter. Because I know a lot of people who are involved in that scope of politics, and there's no way that they would have advised him to say some of the things he said. So I think he definitely needs more tact, and I hope he starts listening, which is one of the primary keys of speech and debate, is listening and then taking action. And I just don't think he's listening right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think I support, like, he's our president, like, he's in. And I honestly supported him even before he was in. And I thought that, not Hillary. But I think that there's a big difference between being politically correct and just being good at communicating. And the way that he communicates right now is, there's also a difference between being blunt and just being Trump.
Yes.
Because, like, there's just a way that he words everything that is just so off-putting. And I think that, I'm not saying that he is the reason for these reactions, but I'm saying that it's very easily avoidable without losing that Trump feel to it. Just by just rewording just a little bit. And, like, I think it's that like cold shoulder feeling that you get when you read that, and it makes you not want to support it because of the way that it's presented. And so that's the biggest thing with me is like, even when I read his when I read his tweets, like the whole transgender tweet thing, when I read it, I was offended. And I think that is just fine. Like, I think that it's a business decision. But the way that he worded it on Twitter made me at first be like, no, this is so dumb. He's taking away people's rights. But it was just because of the way that was worded. And like, it made me angry. And so like, even someone who like looks at things that he says and agrees with them, he managed to somehow get me to like not agree with him. And so I think there's improvement in just the way that he presents himself. And he definitely doesn't have to go totally to the other side of the lane either. Like, I think he ran on this whole evening the pendulum, and he's not evening it because he has his own pendulum of Trump.
Right.
And it's like, can you get back on our pendulum? Like, you made your own, we get it. It's cool, but like, bro.
And it's just funny to see, because the first rule of political communications is you take away social media from your client or the politician you're working for. And to see him with such direct access to Twitter, to Facebook, that's about the worst case scenario for any political communications team, unless there is a time of great tragedy. Where something has happened. I look back at 9/11, and if George Bush had a Twitter then, obviously he would probably be posting something very heartfelt from his point of view only, not from a campaign staffer.
Yeah.
But to have everyday access to a Twitter account with someone who is not known for being a very tactful individual is probably not the best idea.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I think, what do you think is going to happen next? Like, what do you think is going to follow Trump? Like, do you have any?
I think Trump will probably be known for North Korea. I think I think something's coming down the pike with North Korea. I do think that we will probably be in some sort of conflict with them in the next 2 to 3 years. It's escalating right now, and when you post things on Twitter like, if you come at us, we're going to come at you with a fury. I think North Korea is willing to test that fury. I just don't think they have much to lose. So I think he will be known for some sort of North Korea conflict. I hope we come out of it successful. But I also think he will be known for just kind of being a president who was controversial and was generally average. I don't think his presidency is going to be anything to write home about.
Yeah.
But I also, despite his comments, despite his lack of tact and everything like that, I think economically he will be regarded as a pretty average president.
Do you think do you think he's really gonna impact the whole draining the swamp kind of?
No, because there are too many donors. There are too many donors and people that Trump owes favors to. While he ran on a platform of, saying that he wasn't backed by special interests or anything like that, there are obviously special interests at play in any presidency. And so I think the swamp will continue. He hired Scaramucci, who was gone in 10 days. I definitely think that was a swamp monster, so to speak. And I actually think he came in and knocked out somebody who was a really good person to have in Trump's ear, which is Reince Priebus. Reince, from leading the RNC, he really knew how to be tactful about different situations. And I think Trump is trying to bring people in that model his behavior rather than the people who really should be around him, which are people different from him.
Yeah, I totally agree. What? How do you go about like finding your knowledge about like the political realm? Like, do you like? Can you maybe walk through like what you do?
Sure. So, especially in the speech and debate world, we're constantly researching U.S. News and World Report, um, various resources, and so I would say a lot of my research is done not only through uh, papers, but from folks who live in different states. I have a friend out in Virginia right now who's kind of keeping me posted on the Charlottesville actions. So um, just kind of having a really broad network of people across the country really helps me stay in tune with what's happening on the ground. It's kind of like being a well-informed reporter without having to go into the field.
Do you follow any news outlets and like what do you follow them on?
Sure. I would say I follow The Economist quite a bit. U.S. News and World Report is another big source. So I would say those are the two main ones. I do read the Wall Street Journal. Um, I like getting a good mix because the more sources that you gather information from, the quicker you're able to discern what is probably the truth. And I think too many people are getting their news straight from Facebook now, and that's where the misinformation is coming. And why not? I mean, you're on Facebook already, and that's where your friends are. And I think it's a dangerous predicament that that's where we're getting our news from
Yeah.
when we have very highly qualified journalists who are in the field every day. And even if they have a politically leaning slant on the topic, they can at least give a somewhat impartial view of the facts.
Yeah. And I feel like I've on Twitter I have a Twitter account that's literally just like all news outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like even on Twitter it's easy for a like pretty like down the middle news outlet to portray a certain opinion
Mm-hmm.
with that like character limit. And like just what you're saying about the Facebook and stuff, like if you don't pursue the actual news outlet in the article, it's very easy to just get your opinion from that
Mm-hmm.
like very quick snapshot of what it's about. And like on the iPhones and the news app or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I really like using that the most is like
Sure.
because it takes the top news stories from like all of the accounts you follow and puts like right on your homepage.
That's great.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like the last year or so, like it's really just been a big topic of discussion about like how to find media without like getting slanted one way or the other because it is like it's definitely a task.
Absolutely.
But I don't really use Facebook. Like, is it kind of like Twitter, but like you can put more words?
Yes.
Okay. I was like,
Yeah, well, and like you were saying with Twitter, I mean, when we're condensing our news into 140 characters, normally the news is left out and the opinion takes its place. And that's because a lot of these reporters who are on those accounts are paid to create traction. And you're not going to create traction with facts, you're going to do it with an opinion.
yeah. Do you think like overall generally with the like the government's laws and stuff like small business is supported, or do you feel like there's still a lot of room to grow with like supporting small businesses?
I think there's a lot of room to grow. I'm actually working with a small business this week. It's a small restaurant that just isn't very well versed in marketing and retention. And I think a lot of the bigger corporations have support because they have the money, they have the funding to go pay a market research firm 50 grand to figure out why their customer retention is down.
Yeah.
But we look at businesses like the Ville that just closed up shop. I think they had a good idea, but maybe not the right market segment for what they offered, and definitely not the right idea with engaging their customers. So I think the more that people in the community can kind of rally around these small businesses and say, look, hey, I've got some expertise in marketing, I've got some expertise in insurance or real estate. We just have to bring more voices to the table, and people have to ask for help. If you don't know something, you just have to ask for help. And I think that's the number one reason why small businesses fail, is because the owner either has an ego or is afraid to ask for help. And that's what being a leader is asking for help and surrounding yourself with those people that know a heck of a lot more than you do.